Thanks, Angel. Hello, and welcome back to BioProcess Online Live. I'm Matt Pillar, Chief Editor at BioProcess Online and host of the Business of Biotech podcast. For the next approximately an hour, I'll be guiding a discussion on how emerging biopharma companies are approaching process automation, what they're getting right about it, what they're getting wrong about it, what they ought to know about its operations and regulatory impacts before committing to it, and why you shouldn't ignore it, especially if you're putting it off because you think it'll cost the entirety of your most recent funding round. We have an incredible panel assembled for the discussion today. We've got Randy Maddux, COO at iBio. Paul Testa is here. He's EVP of Operations and Supply Chain at Kyowa, Kirin, North America. And Devendra Luhar, VP of Manufacturing and Plant Operations, that is, at Sutro Biopharma, is here as well. Gentlemen, welcome to the show.
Thank you.
Thanks, Matt.
Thank you.
Yeah, it's great to have you guys all. I appreciate you setting the time aside for us and for our audience. Want to remind the audience as we move through here, be sure to ask questions. These guys are eager to address the questions you have. But we've got a lot of ground to cover, so I'm going to jump right into it. Each of you are at different stages of the bioprocess automation journey. And I'd like to start just by getting some background on each of the positions that you're in. If you could share a little bit about your unique bioprocessing environment and essentially share with us what you're making and where you've begun to implement automation in the making of it. Devin, since you're on screen, let's start with you.
Okay. All right. So Devin, instead of Devendra, Devin Luhar, probably easier to call. So I've been in the industry for over 30 years now. Prior experience includes Novartis, Boehringer Ingelheim, Baxter. I've been with Sutro now for the last 5 years. And when I came to Sutro, the journey basically was getting an operation started, manufacturing started. So going from sort of the R&D development mindset to the manufacturing operations mindset. So the first, really the part was to get the infrastructure building with all the different organizational structure to ensure support and manufacturing operations. So if you look at automation, where we make basically ADC, and we have a unique technology which is completely cell-free in the way we manufacture protein. And so that's what excited me to come and join Sutro. And basically, the automation, there was zero automation when we started. And what was really important as we progressed and as we evolved as an organization was to really two drivers for process automation. One was consistency and process understanding, which was the main drivers. So we're not fully automated, even at 5 years later, but we've done multi-clinical manufacturing products, at least half a dozen now. And part of what we've done is to really smartly look at all the different operations, mainly the fermentation piece and the purification piece, downstream piece, and look at where it's important in terms of gathering data, pulling data from the operation to understand our process, both from the development and also process consistency. And so what's been really good is to have that support from the senior leadership team at Sutro. My job and my team's job is to educate folks to basically understand why it's important and critical to have that. And we've been pretty successful in sort of implementing some of those, what I call basic fundamental automation, making sure that you understand your process. We're still not there yet. We're still investing quite a bit into automation. And again, the main driver, again, is a better understanding, pulling data. And then also, the biggest thing as part of operation is also turning things around as fast as possible. So cycle time is super important, critical.
Cool.
And so.
Yeah, we'll dig into some of the details there, Devin, as we move forward. But that's a great, a key takeaway right there is that 5 years ago when you started, there was none, right? Yeah. So we'll get back to you and talk about sort of what some of the steps you took to get there looked like. Paul, how about you? What are you working on at Kyowa Kirin, and what does the automation scene look like there at present?
Yeah, thanks, Matt. So Kyowa Kirin, global Japan-based pharmaceutical company. We talk about specialty pharmaceutical, but really here in North America, there's a couple different classes of products that we're spending our time in. So we've had recent releases, new products to market, both in the biologic space, which are obviously more in need of automation. We've got some small molecule applications, as well as a patch drug delivery application. So for our purposes here in the North America space, we are essentially 100% because we do have a good amount of internal factory activity. So I'll really speak to both of those camps. In the internal space, I would say it's kind of typical from an automation perspective. So I break it into, the actual, bioprocessing aspect of, the work that's ongoing. So what's going on inside the tank and temperature monitoring and time and, fluid flow and those sorts of things. All that pretty well automated in these internal factories. Information, not so much, right? We're still, we've still got a long way to go on our journey of, full automation of, what I like to call the information of the processing. And then the second piece, as I started with, from an outsourced perspective, we're just like we, just referenced, we're on a bit of a journey. So I think automation looks a little bit different. The expectations of automation a little bit different maybe today than they were 5 or 10 years ago. And that, scalability that I'm sure we'll get to in a little bit. And then the business case aspects of that scalability and that automation, I know we'll get to through the rest of the discussion. So I think the flyby would be multiple different applications in several different sort of product and technology delivery areas. And then I feel like we've got maybe not unique, but a bit of a challenging landscape as it relates to both internal and external and various expectations in those, in those arenas to manage. So it's a nice meaty topic for us to dig into from our company's perspective.
Yeah, for sure. Thanks, Paul. How about you, Randy? What's iBio working on, and where's automation playing a role right now?
Yeah, thank you, Matt. Well, we're unique in a lot of ways because we deploy a platform that uses plants essentially as bioreactors, and not to be confused with plants that that grow and you extract various natural chemicals out of. These are plants that are genetically engineered to produce the proteins of interest, whether it be cytokines, antibodies, vaccine fragments, those type of things. So from that standpoint, we have, as you might expect, upstream automation. Our upstream are essentially plants. So obviously we would want to have and do have automated lighting cycles, automated nutrient feed cycles, those type of things, which, when you're caring for, whole racks full of plants, obviously automation is critical to do that. And then downstream, which is more similar to probably what my colleagues run, you have your purification trains, and that's primarily, islands of automations and skid-based, automation to make sure those processes run consistently, time over time. From our journey at iBio, we are really investing in some of the base things like an integrated quality management system, electronic lab notebooks, LIMS system, which allows you to take information from your process and apply it through your testing and release processes, as well as things like maintenance management and ERP, because you got to manage your materials, your finances, and everything else as well. So we are really working toward all of those things as we're bringing our company forward.
Yep. Okay, so let me stick with you, Randy, while you're on screen. That's a good synopsis of sort of who you are and where you are right now. Where did you start, though? A lot of the folks who are tuning in today are sort of pre-process automation investment. They're in that exploratory stage, and they're in the process of mapping out, if we're going to do this, where does it make sense to begin?
Yeah.
So can you share with us, Randy, where at least in your purview, during your tenure there, where you sort of saw automation take its first baby steps, if you will?
Well, you're referring specifically to iBio?
You are more than welcome to draw on your entire, your career beyond iBio.
Yeah. Well, I think the key to any sort of investment is around what value it brings to the business, right? It's very easy to focus on the tool and not really, and sort of lose focus on why the tool is important or potentially useful. So speaking more generally, what I always look for is, in most processes, the robustness of that process, the controllability of that process, all of these things are linked to what information can you get from that process, how quickly can you get it, how reliably can you get it. Are there areas where you have human intervention that you can take out? Because as we know, we're all human and all humans make mistakes. So I think that's sort of where you start. You start with, it's like eating an elephant. Start with a piece that you can digest, and I think that's been really my approach. Where are the pain points? If it's in documentation, okay, invest in a documentation system. If it's you need to monitor, pH or lighting levels or whatever in your process. And there are ways to do that better and more reliably, seamlessly, quickly, invest there. So that's really the way I view it, to invest for value and not just to say I've got the latest system, without really understanding what value brings.
Sure. Paul, let me jump over to you. I know you and I talked last week, and I think you in that conversation echoed a bit of what Randy's describing right now. What's your kind of worldview?
I think he's got the right idea. I mean, everybody always wants a do this, then do that type of rule book, and it's not quite that easy, because my answer is, in a lot of cases, it depends, right? It depends on what the specifics of the situation are, where specific needs are. If there's some element of control of your process that will dictate success or failure of the product going forward, I mean, obviously, that requires a little bit of special attention from a business case perspective. So I think it's a lot more of case by case. There's not really a magic bullet or a magic formula for a lot of this stuff. It's just a question of how we advance forward, right? I think the typical model would be to figure it out in a small sort of incubator type environment and then scale it up. And then obviously when you scale it up, you need to have more automation, more control, more specificity of the process. But that's not necessarily the only way to go, I think, is sort of what I internalized that Randy just said. So I think in a lot of cases, we need to just put the automation question and the justification of that automation in the context of the broader journey that we're on, and try to make it all fit together like the puzzle that it actually is. Yeah, Devin, you made the comment in response to the first question that you started with 0 at Sutro. So what was step 1 there?
So I think it starts with the process design in manufacturing, and want to make sure what the inputs are and what the output you're trying to achieve. So you design the automation, or you at least plan the automation around that. Not necessarily the greatest and the best thing, latest technology, but what output are you trying to get out, and what understanding do you need to have in terms of the operation? And then you build the infrastructure around that. As Randy mentioned, things like facilities automation system to track maintenance, for example, the ERP system, the training system, the LIMS systems, all those things to make sure you build around that. But you start with the basic, the manufacturing operation, to say, hey, now do we really understand exactly what we need from this? And then build, do we have full understanding? And how do we produce data on a consistent basis? So I think that's sort of the biggest driver in terms of making sure that you invest in the right thing.